Are you ready for the next part of the Sermon on the Mount? Every one of these sermons that I've been doing in this series that I've been in, that I've been talking about, they can stand alone all on their own. And so every sermon is it's a standalone sermon. And Jesus did a whole bunch of them in one big sermon in Scripture. And today, Jesus is covering, I'm not, Jesus is. And then I'm going to talk about what Jesus talked about. He's covering three disciplines or practices, if you will, that we need in our life. And here's what they are. The first one is giving. The second one is prayer. And the third one is fasting. The title of today's message is Spiritual Disciplines. There's a whole lot of them. When we were doing tithe and offering a few minutes ago, that was one of the things that was mentioned. There's a lot of disciplines. And if you'll get an understanding of what the discipline means, then you can get into a place to receive the promises that the disciplines produce. That was a pause on purpose. The Christian faith is composed of beliefs and practices. Here they are. The beliefs and practices. Giving, prayer, and fasting. Giving, prayer, and fasting are the three disciplines he covers right here. And it's important that we understand that it's because of our belief that we put these things into practice. Yep. If you have the practice without the belief, it's a dry ritual. If you have the belief without the practice, it's fantasy. Now, there's nothing in your life to prove you believe what you say you believe when you don't put into practice that in which you say you believe. Like, I believe in God, but I don't go to church. Well, I don't worship, I don't give, but I'm a believer. Well, not really. You're really not. You're deceived, and you're not acting upon what you say you believe.
Yeah, that's right.
But if you have the practice of going to church, giving some, and then once a month taking communion, and you're here periodically, or what you would call most of the time, you're doing the practice of the church, but your belief is in the ritual. The practice, your belief's in the practice for others to see and for you to make yourself feel good, and it's a dry ritual. And it will become drudgery. It will get to a place where you're like, don't know that I want to do this anymore. Growing up, I watched this in the church I was in with a lot of different men. They would come to church, and it was a dry ritual for them. It was a practice they had because their wife either guilted them or they felt like they were checking the box and doing what they were supposed to do. But it didn't stem from any belief of who Jesus is. It stemmed from what you're supposed to do for others to see. Namely, your wife and possibly your kids. See, their belief was in the practice, not in the one who the practice was for. Let me say that again. You got to be careful that your belief is not in the practice. But it's in the belief is in the one who allows you to have the spiritual discipline of the practice. Right. The compelling nature of Jesus we're talking about today, many have never discovered, but we get to show it to them. So I'm not here to condemn them. I'm here to say, listen, we see this in life, but the fact is, that's not for us to condemn. It's for us to model and show that there can be a different way. Yeah. There's a different life available. I can tell that many of you here today have discovered the Jesus of the New Testament. I believe that with all that I am because I can see it in your consistency of the practices, in your excitement about the practices, and in the fulfillment of you're encouraging others to be a part of it. You're just not fulfilling your little obligation. I checked the box. No, it's way more than that. So the fruit of the Spirit's in your life is all based on the belief and the practice you've put into play in your own life. You're always here. And when worship starts, you really worship. You're engaging. And I'm not talking about outwardly. You can see that inwardly there's just something going on there. You're genuine. So let's talk about the first discipline this morning. The first discipline, giving. Now, I'm not talking about the spiritual discipline of tithing. Please hear me, because that's not what Jesus is talking about here. It's important that you know that. But giving, because you see or you operate or you know that there is a need. And he specifically calls it here in Matthew 6, verse 1. He calls it giving to those in need. In the King James, he says it, your charitable deeds. In the New King James, it's your charitable deeds. So Matthew 6, verse 1. Watch out, Jesus says. Don't do your good deeds publicly to be admired by others, for you will lose the reward from your Father in heaven. You're going to lose the reward from your Father in heaven when you do it publicly so that you're admired by others. Well, what's the reward? The promises. Yeah. The evidence of goodness. All the things that God's... So you don't want to lose that. Verse 2, when you give to someone in need, don't do it as the hypocrites do, blowing trumpets in the synagogues and streets to call attention to their acts of charity. I tell you the truth, they've received all the reward they will ever get. But when you give to someone in need, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Give your gifts in private, and your Father who sees everything will reward you. Jesus is talking about not doing acts conspicuous. Not doing them to attract attention. Not doing acts just to be seen by others. Now, this was obviously an issue in that day. So the question is this: is it still an issue now? Well, I want to talk about that. Is it still an issue now? Because I look at what's going on here at Christian Ministries, and I don't see this here in this church. And all three of the spiritual disciplines that I want to be talking about, and we'll see if we get to all of them today, because I don't want to scare you when I'm still on one and we're 30 minutes in. It can be summarized like this. There are two motivations that Jesus is presenting to us. The first one is you got people posing, and then you got other people that are problem solving. Are you a poser? Or are you a problem solver? When you do something to be seen by men, you're posing. This passage mentioned blowing trumpets in public and in church. And we're not talking about Brent here. It was not actually trumpets being sounded in the first century. I did some study here because I thought they might be referring to actual trumpets. It was a statement that was being used to point out that there was an act drawing attention to man. And the attention was posing godliness. Posing godliness. Glory to men is a constant motivation then, and it's a constant motivation now. And I'm not talking about just in the giving, because we have a lot of great givers here. But you're not blowing a trumpet in church. I don't think that's an issue here. But we have to see how that relates to our culture and our society so that we're educated in this area. See, I don't see people giving here just to be seen by men. But I do see it in our society, and you do too. Our society is all the time godless people trying to appear moral. Happens all the time. Trying to impose a different value system on God's people. Let me give you a term here. False compassion. False compassion. It's a real thing. And it's because it's so real, we need to address it. We need to understand what Jesus was saying here. The great thing is that Jesus, he exposed it and he said it right here. False compassion, trying to present yourself as caring and compassionate, but not doing it in a way that profits the person that you are supposedly putting your compassion towards. You're doing it in a way to make you look good or for you to feel good, and it's done to bring profit to you and to you alone, not to the person who you're trying to bless. It's either magnifying the way you look, or it's magnifying the way that you feel. You might even be deceived to think it's just magnifying the way you're going to receive, but God already said you won't have any reward from me here. So you're trying to get a reward outside of the spiritual reward that God says, I'm going to give you by being faithful to what I've asked you to do. I don't know if everyone knows this or not. Giving to the needy is a practice invented by Christians. Given to the needy, invented by Christians. I'm not sure if we know that from our history. Christianity was birthed in the 1st century, and it was birthed in the middle of the ancient pagan Roman Empire. Really big deal. We had a gentleman here at Culture Conference last year, Chuck Warnock. I don't know if you remember that name, but he wrote a book called Modern Paganism. And he addressed a lot of this in this book. It was phenomenal. But during the Roman Empire, there was no pressure at that time to give to the poor. The poor were just poor, and if you were poor, you're just out of luck. There was no social programs, no safety net you could go to. You sure couldn't go to the government and get any help. See, there was no charitable giving. There was no hospitals. Christians are the ones who invented all of these concepts. But during the Roman Empire, they looked at Christianity as really strange. When Christians would do things like this, they didn't understand it because the culture at that time, the Romans saw someone else's lack. As they would see someone in lack, it would make them feel better themselves. Well, I'm just strong and they're weak. And it was a real animalistic behavior. See, animals are the ones who eat their weak. Everyone who would be on the weak side or not be able to make it, they needed to die off. They needed to be gone. It made everybody else stronger. And that's the way the culture thought in that day and age until Christianity came in. And as society became more and more Christian, then it became more popular to give to those that were less in any area. See, you're great in an area, so you give to someone who's less in that area. It's no different than our culture today. When you have more money than someone and you see someone's in need of some money, then you feel compelled to give. That's a Christian thought that was not in play when Jesus was teaching this, because it was 1st century, and he understood the signs of what was going on there. So does this even apply to us today? Absolutely. Over time, Christianity became more and more not just accepted, but the manner for what they saw as moral behavior. And so in culture continuing to gain more in Christianity, there became a pressure to give to those that were weaker or less than where you were. And culture just continued to grow that way. Now we see this all the time. Think about it. If you think about this, companies do this all the time. Organizations do it. Every one of you see it every day. I'm amazed. It's all over. Would you like to donate your change to? Would you like to round up? And then they tell you what you're rounding up for, the change is going for. And we sometimes, we can feel like a heel when we don't, because culture has embraced this. Well, I probably should. I don't know. A portion of every sale, businesses, corporations, a portion of every sale is going to feed the children or going to school education or going to this or that. And it's so confusing. People virtually godless, wanting to extend a moral Christian view. However, no facet of any of the other moralities or spiritual disciplines, just the one of giving. Now think about this. It's one of those things that they've abandoned everything that has to do with Christianity, but they're into giving to help someone in need. Why? Because people want to be seen as virtuous. People want to be seen as caring. They're drawing attention to themselves. I needed a trumpet. See, they're doing big concerts for a benefit. Benefit concerts, you see them all the time. They've abandoned every other facet, but they're going to do this big concert to help someone. Politicians giving to the poor. making themselves profit while abandoning every other morality that Christianity has given. I hope you're seeing this. Here's what's happening in our world. They're taking one morality from Christianity while opposing everything else Christianity has given us. Conspicuous giving. This is what I see as the modern version of that. Yeah, Jesus was dealing with something, and we understand the culture at that time. Well, you have to understand the culture at our time. Jesus dealt with it for our culture, not just theirs. The modern version, conspicuous giving. Every time I'm asked or see some big invitation to give in support of something, whatever it is, would you donate your change? I hear it every time you go through a fast food line, every time you're anywhere. Would you like to donate your change? We didn't go anywhere on vacation that we didn't pay to go, and then when we get there, they'd put tips, and they'd get up there and tell you how horrible you are if you don't give a tip. I'm not against tipping, but it's the spiritual morality of giving that they have adopted, and they're trying to use that in a way that God said, wait a minute here. Don't be blowing the trumpet. And that's what we see people doing all the time. They're blowing a trumpet to make themselves look good. They're also playing upon people to make people say, well, I feel better because I gave. I want our church educated here on Jesus' sermon. He addressed this specifically so we wouldn't be deceived. So many studies have came out showing, I've got a whole book on this, how we help the poor is actually hurting the poor. I'm just telling you. You can say, well, I don't know if I believe that. Well, you're deceived. I watch it all the time, especially in foreign countries. Alvin has taught me so much about this concept. It's amazing. Being involved with foreign missions for years, I can see what happens. You're not aware of what kind of help you think you're giving. You're just not aware. Well, I think I'm helping them. And if you're not careful, you're actually ended up hurting them. People do it all the time, giving. They are not problem solving, they're posing. Now hear me. We should be giving to the poor, to those in need. Because you can take this message and say, oh my goodness, I can't believe pastor's there. No. You've got to hear what I'm saying. We're just not doing it in a way that is benefiting the kingdom. It takes energy and it takes work to figure out how to do it and benefit people. Instead of just putting all the benefit in yourself. Once again, I don't see this here. No one here I see is blowing the trumpet. I see this in the public square. And I want God's people to know, and we know what to do about it. For people truly to get help, here's what you have to know. You have to bring the other areas of Christian behavior in. You can't just give and leave all the other moralities out. Well, I'm going to give to this need. Well, their need is way bigger than just money. See, you have to have personal morality in practice if you're going to be giving. You have to bring personal responsibility into practice. You have to bring other disciplines into place for giving to even work. It's way bigger than just throwing money at a problem. Come on, are you hearing me? I want to say our church is involved monthly in giving. So every time you place money in a tithe bucket, in an offering bucket, there is giving that takes place. And some of you give even past that. And we have two areas of mission work that we give to here. And we're looking at a couple of more right now because as the church has grown. I see that we can either increase where we're at or we can diversify and we can get more areas and help in more ways. And so we've got some of that going on. I'm talking to Sherry about some of that and some of the mission work we're looking at being involved with this next year. We'll be talking more about that. Here's the deal. The mission work we're involved with is more, when we give to that, it's way bigger than just posing. It's problem solving. And it's way more than just feeding them. It's discipling them and teaching them the other spiritual disciplines that go along with what their gift just gave to them. I mean, what it just did for them. So we're heavily involved. But we're giving in an area that we're involved with or understand the practice that's going on. It is the Christian disciplines that go along with giving that produce the blessing that giving produces. And that shows true compassion, not a perverted compassion. Jesus encouraged us to do it. Just do it the right way. Just do it the right way. And when you're rounding up, I don't mind you rounding up, but do you know that other moralities are being involved in just...
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Are the other spiritual disciplines being involved when you give that extra at Taco Bell? Yeah. I didn't come to talk... I'm a Taco Bell fan. But they want you to round up, and I'm just telling you, I round up, and if you take all the money you're rounding up or all the money you're donating your change to, and you put it to something that you know produces other spiritual moralities, how much more would the kingdom benefit?
Yeah.
You need to think that through. Number 2, the practice that Jesus mentioned here in this sermon, prayer. And he mentions it, and he has it in 2 parts here. The first one, Matthew 6, 5 through 8, we need to be approaching prayer with the right attitude. And then he goes on in verses 9 through 13, and he teaches us how to pray. Not what to pray, how to pray. We've taken the Lord's Prayer, and we've said, this is what you pray. And he just prefaced it before he even gets to the Lord's Prayer on this is not what to pray, it's how you pray. And there's a difference between how and what. But I'm going to get into that later. Let's get into approaching prayer with the right attitude. Matthew 6, verse 5. When you pray, don't be like the hypocrites who love to pray publicly on street corners and in the synagogues where everyone can see them. I'll tell you the truth, that's all the reward they'll ever get. Are you noticing a pattern here? Jesus says, okay, here's the deal. Here's your spiritual discipline, and with the spiritual discipline, there's reward. There's reward for spiritual discipline. However, if you mess it up and you pose, or you're just caught up on the practice and you don't understand the belief behind the practice, then you're missing the benefit. So don't be like the hypocrites who just are doing it for everybody to see. He says, I tell you the truth, that's all the reward they'll ever get. But when you pray, go away by yourself, shut the door behind you, and pray to the Father in private. Then your Father, who sees everything, will reward you. When you pray, don't babble on and on as the Gentiles do. They think their prayers are answered merely by repeating their words again and again and again and again. I added the 3 again. Don't be like them. For your Father knows exactly what you need even before you ask him. I love it when everything I'm getting ready to preach is already said right before we set up tithe and offering. God's not wondering what you're in need of. Did you hear that today? You've heard it now a couple times. He knows what you're in need of, but he's waiting for you to get in private and recognize that you're in need of it, and he's the answer for your need. Not your public display of telling everybody, and we got people doing it, oh, well, you just pray with me about them. And we actually disguise our prayer concerns. We disguise our gossip by saying they're prayer concerns. And we just want to talk. We want everybody to know, will you be praying for me about this because I'm dealing with this, this, and this. When you're looking for your need to come from them instead of actually the prayer will come from you being behind closed doors in your private place. Jesus addresses this real specifically here. So the attitudes that help us in our prayer lives, number 1, there's 3 of them here. Number 1, be real. Be real. Be real. When you pray, don't be like the hypocrites who are just praying in front of everybody. I tell you the truth, that's all the reward they're going to get. Because somebody's going to see it and they're going to feel compelled or whatever because of our Christian culture now. Don't try to impress others as the Pharisees were trying to do. The Pharisees were people who would stand on the street corner, raise their hands and their face to the sky, and carry on in this very public way trying to impress other people. We were in Washington, D.C. this last year, and there is a big Muslim group of people that go around in certain public squares up there, and they take their prayer mats, and what they do is every hour they lay this prayer mat down right in public areas. They don't go over and try to get out of everybody's way. They're doing it publicly so everybody can see them. Jesus addressed this. Why don't you go get behind some closed doors and pray? Because they've messed up and they're not really understanding what prayer produces. They're caught up on a ritual. Don't try to impress people, and let me say this, don't try to impress God. Don't pray what you think God wants to hear. That may rub you wrong, but hear me out. He already knows your heart, and you're not informing him. He's already informed. He's wanting you to know that he's on your team. And when all you're trying to do is to get him to move instead of get in relationship with him, he'll move on your behalf, but he's looking for your heart. He's looking for you to be real. A lot of people have taken this verse and they've taken it out of context, and I don't want to do that. Because sometimes we think, well, then we shouldn't even be praying before our meals in public. Well, that's another ditch. Well, I don't know. We shouldn't even be praying out loud. We ought to always be about. No, you've missed it. Before a meal, what's on your heart? I know what's on mine. I just ordered. I'm waiting for it to get to the table so I can pray and dive in, right? What's on your heart? Before the meal, if you're hungry, what's on your heart? The food. The food, what's on your heart? So the spiritual discipline in praying before a meal, I think, is a big deal. Now, I'm not saying that you have failed if you don't do that. But I am challenging you to take a few seconds and thank God before you indulge your flesh, before you indulge your physical. Maybe I shouldn't use flesh there, but before you feed your body, make sure you understand the only reason you're able to feed your body is because we have a gracious, loving God who set up a culture that has produced for us a blessing. And so all it is, it's an opportunity for you to say, God, thank you. Thank you. I remember that I wouldn't be eating if it wasn't before. Thank you. God, thank you for this food, and I want to ask that you bless it. Thank you, and I ask that you bless it. I've had people that I've never had dinner with, and I think they were a little amazed that my prayers before dinner are pretty short. And why? I don't know. When someone starts praying, and they're praying an hour before the food, you got to wonder if they pray any other time. Good grief. You needed to say all that in your closet. Right now, we're food, and we're thinking and asking him to bless it, and then we're eating. I'm not discrediting God. I'm not putting him out. I'm just saying, but then we got others who's like, well, I'm not going to pray. That's just for everybody to see. No, it's to put God first. It's to put God first. And I'm not doing that for everybody in the restaurant to see. I'm not doing it to impress everybody at the table. I'm there to honor God. Thank you for providing this food, and I ask you to bless it in case anybody messed it up before it got to my table. Be real. Come on, are you getting that? Be real. That's what he's saying here. The second point here that we've got to understand, the attitude that we come in prayer is to be relaxed. Or let's say, get away. When you pray, go away by yourself, shut the door behind you, pray to your Father in private. Then your Father who sees everything will reward you. You just need to relax. You need to go someplace where you can be alone, where you can be quiet, where you can take some deep breaths. Remove distractions and concentrate. The two main excuses most people give for not praying are that they don't have time or they don't have a place to go. What I'm telling you is you live in the Ozarks, there's a place to go. Now, maybe if you're in one of these big cities that I was on vacation on, I understand it's a little trouble. But here, it ain't no trouble, man. There is plenty of place to go. Go get in your car, close the doors. But find a place to go and spend some time with him. Tell him what's really on your heart, not because he doesn't know, but because he wants you to know. He wants you to reveal your heart to him. Once again here, we find pushback against posing. That's what it is. Giving works in society because our society is founded on Christian principles. And to be considered virtuous in any area of society, you have to borrow something from Christianity. To think that you're somebody and to fulfill what you want others to think of you or what you want to think of yourself, you have to steal something from Christianity to be okay with how I'm living life. And Jesus is pushing against posing. He doesn't want you posing. But know this, giving has been stolen and perverted in society. Prayer hasn't. This is an issue for the church. Because we have posers in the area of prayer in the church. And maybe, well, I just don't pray in front of anybody. Please don't ask me to pray. Boy, some of the most embarrassing moments of my life is ask someone to pray and say, I don't pray publicly. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's okay, though. If you'll get with me, I'll help you. Because it's just a discipline, and disciplines take discipline. They do. I understand it's embarrassing and it's hard, but you've got some work to do. Get alone in your private place so that you can be disciplined enough. There's a discipline to prayer. And I'm just telling you, the more you're praying in private, the easier it is to pray in front of your spouse. The more you pray alone and you've got away and you're relaxed, then it produces a peace when you're asked to pray publicly. Prayer in the church world is an area that the enemy is getting in. And I'm sick of it, and I don't want God's people being deceived anymore. Jesus mentions, don't babble on and on as people of other religions do, and I've seen that in the church. We're not needing a bunch of babbling on and on and on. I get that. Do that and just talk and talk and talk. I mean, you bring around people and they just talk and talk, and you're like, shush. That's not what God's saying. He's saying you're not doing that for other people. But in your private time, do some talking. He wants to hear from you. In the King James, it's not babble, it's vain repetitions. It's important to know that in that day and time, there were prayers to deities, not God, Baal, Diana, gods and goddesses. And the way they prayed was just repetitious, almost like chants. And you see some of these type of prayers in non-Christian cultures today. Buddhist monks, Eastern religions, repetitious prayers. All these repetitious prayers are done because they look spiritual. Right. They look pious. They look virtuous. That Jesus is saying, it's not real. Don't fall for that. Yeah. Don't aspire for that. In the Middle Ages, the Christian church fell for it again. Churches created these prayers. The Roman Catholic Church, Eastern Orthodox churches created all these repetitious prayers. They actually had prayer books. And you'd memorize them. And sometimes you'd have to repeat them 30, sometimes 50 times, 100 times. Like somehow that is what it takes for God to hear you. They think it would take all of those repetitions for him to be able to move on your behalf. In ancient times, not only was it God that was called Lord, but people in high positions were called Lord. The Greek word for intercession, get this, meant used to petition a person of high rank. That's what it was used for, to petition a person of high rank. You're petitioning someone of high rank for help. That's what intercession is. Yeah. Petitioning someone of high rank for help. So if you're in intercessory prayer, you're petitioning God for some help. If you are the high person and someone's petitioning you for help, what would you think if they came in and had the same line memorized and they just said it 20 times in a row? You'd say, I heard you the first time. Yeah. Maybe you didn't hear it the first time. Maybe you heard it the second time. But you just keep saying it over and over again. I don't know. I just don't think it'd make me feel good. It wouldn't build conversation. It'd be like, okay, I got it. Now let's talk about it. And that's what prayer is. Yeah. It's not just you talking, it's you listening. It seems to me that it's almost an insult to God to think that this repetition is what he's after. Right. Babbling on and on, vain repetitions. I believe this was created by people who don't really know God. No. They're posing. Yeah. Prayer is a relationship, it's a conversation. You talk, you share your heart, and then you zip it and listen. You listen. Repetitious prayer is not listening, it's just trying to be heard. I'm concerned that we've been trained by our religious heritage to talk to God and never expect for him to talk back. Wow. I'm convinced. We have no expectancy for him to say anything back. And that's not new. That happened in first century. In fact, Peter Many of y'all know this story in Acts 12. Peter was put in prison and everyone gets together and they start praying for him. All of them praying. I mean, they're not quitting. They're in. God opens the jail cell. Angel tells him where everybody's at. He shows up and he knocks on the door. The servant comes to the door and is like, "Wow!" and slams the door right in Peter's face and goes back and says, "Y'all ain't gonna believe it. Peter's out there." Oh, shut up. Well, maybe they didn't say it like that, but no way, he's not out there. They didn't even believe what they were praying for. And we think that's amazing as we read it in Scripture, but really, how many are we like, "Oh, get out of here. That didn't really happen." Well, what we've been praying about?
Wow.
We got to be careful that we don't pray with no expectancy. If so, we're into the practice, but we're not into the belief. And we're posing, we're not involved with the problem solver. Jesus is saying, don't fall for that. It can happen. It's a discipline. It's what we do in life, but be careful that you're not just saying the same thing over and over in conversation. I think it's important that you get this. It's just really important because God is wanting to reveal to you. So you've got to be real, you've got to be relaxed, and you've got to let Him and you yourself reveal what's going on. It's important. It's important that you allow revelation. Revealing is revelation. That's what it is. So what can you take from this today? Let's go out of here not just being real with each other, which we're pretty good at that, but let's be real with God.
Yeah, that's really good, actually.
Come on, let's relax. Let's not freak out that we got to go talk. I need to talk to God. No. If you've practiced that in your private, then it's pretty easy to come up here and get in agreement with somebody that's praying. So, but we're just going to get some revelation. And I'm not saying that people you're praying for are the ones who give the revelation. God does. And it's in that relationship that you receive that.
Wow. Yeah.
See, let's go out of here and let's be real. Let's relax and let's reveal what's on our heart. And He'll reveal what's on His. You're going to have to listen, though. You can't be doing all the talking. There's got to be a time where you just kind of calm yourself. The Bible says, "Be still and know that I'm God." I don't look at being still as continuing to babble. Be still and know. I want to end with this today. Andrew Boner, a great man of prayer, had 3 rules. Here they were. Not to speak to any man before speaking to Jesus. Not to do anything with his hands until he had been on his knees. And not to read the papers, and he'd have said cell phone if he had one, until he'd read his Bible. Spiritual disciplines are important. And I pray that we'll receive God's teaching that He gave us. And we'll be disciplined because it's in the disciplines of life that we operate in because of our belief that we get and receive the blessings that God has for us.